Carrie, I will pass things on to you. And I guess I will stop sharing my screen since we're just talking.
All right. So this is a part of the day that I'm very excited about. We have Carrie, Kim, and Kate, hosted by Carrie. So we have lots of C's and K's today. So we've already heard a little bit from Carrie and Kim. Kate, we haven't heard from you yet, but what I'll ask is just that everyone gives kind of a short introduction of themselves, as well as kind of just background with training and any other information you'd like to share. So, Carrie, would you like to kick it off?
Sure. You guys have heard a lot from me already today, but I'm the CEO and co founder of New View Strategies. And my passion from training started as an end user of the software. So I was a corporate controller for about 8 years before I moved on to work for a Microsoft partner. And the thing that I learned from working as a functional consultant was that I really love training. And I wanted to help people to understand how they could do more with the software and to be able to make improvements and changes to their business processes. So, along with Kim, I started this company back in 2017, and we've been training people nonstop and helping them to improve their business processes ever since.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carrie. Kim.
My name is Kim Congleton. I am the COO and co-owner of Newview Strategies. I Early on in my career, I wanted to be in early education. I was actually an early education major. I found out I wasn't really going to make a lot of money that way, and there were a lot of challenges with parents back then. So I went into computers, and kind of my love for sharing my knowledge and training others just kind of came out as part of that as well. Like Carrie, I started on the customer side. And we really, at the company I was at, it was a struggle to get them to commit to let me train our users. So I have seen it from that perspective. And then when we started the company, we really wanted to focus on providing training that would help people do their jobs better. So that's me.
All right. I think I learned something new about Kim almost every day. All right. Thank you so much, Kim. Kate, thank you so much for joining us as our guest today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited about this opportunity. So, just a little bit of background from me. I'll start the day I was born, and then I'll push fast forward. I grew up in a home of public education teachers. Both of my mother and my father were public education teachers. They're both retired. My mother was a remedial education teacher, so I've always had a heart for what I call special learners. So my dad is a master potter by degree, and he was a art teacher. So I grew up with education just such a huge part of who I am and the way that I think and the way that I present information, honestly. So like Kim, I also decided that I might go the public education route and decided very quickly that I couldn't live on that salary. So changed my focus, and I now am interestingly the VP of Marketing and Events for U.S. Transactions Corporation. We are a merchant service provider. We have a payment integration into Business Central. In addition to UST, we have an education platform, UST Education. We offer over 200 webinars a year for continuing education credits. So I'm very active in that process. In addition, have spearheaded my own training programs in various jobs that I've had over the years in marketing. So I have like a toe in all of the pools, as they would say. So continuing education, so that would be subject matter expertise and as well as some corporate training opportunities. And I myself have just gone through training with 5 new hires at UST Education. So this is very near and dear to me, and I have implemented a lot of the things that that I want to talk about with you guys, like this week alone. So thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Kate. We are excited to hear more from you. So I do have some questions, and I'm going to give the first one to Kate. So when we were kids in school, we all sat through lecture and learning and all of this. As adults and in the corporate environment, how is corporate training different from that learning that we had as kids in school?
Ah, yes, the days of school, cardboard pizza, shepherd's pie, those days. So those days were more about, I think, general knowledge of those core subjects, math, literature, history. The corporate training programs that I've seen and been involved in are a little bit more, much more customized and relevant to the specific jobs. So that being bucket number one as an answer, customization and relevance. Corporate training is really tailored more to the needs of the job of the employee and specifically the company at large. Is designed to address the challenges and maybe the requirements of that role. Another big difference I've seen, COVID aside and distance learning aside, is the self-directed learning. In school, the learning process is more structured, instructor led. Instructor gives a lesson and then we regurgitate it with a test. There's a less of an emphasis on self-directed learning in corporate training. Sometimes employees are more often expected to take a more proactive approach to their own learning. Myself, in addition to the corporate training that I got, I'm fully expected to stay at the forefront of trends and ongoing changes. And so there's a lot of self-directed learning for me. I have my nose in a book at the end of every day, continually learning new trends, marketing trends, new sales techniques, all of that. So self-directed learning versus more of that structured instructor-led. I think one more point to make, kind of the difference, would be the continuous learning and adaption differences that I see. Our softwares, as we've seen all day today, there are constantly new releases, new things to learn. The needs of an organization changes. Employees may need to continually update their skills and their knowledge sets to stay current. In our traditional high school setting, the story of 1492 isn't ever going to change. The outcome is the same, right? So it's that continuous learning and adaptation of our skills, of our software, staying one step ahead of all of those changes. So those were lots of answers. I'm wordy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that really resonates, I'm sure, with most of us, of just trying to stay on top of, even as we saw in the intro session, just those different ways of learning. So thank you, Kate.
Of course.
Carrie, I'll kick it over to you for this question. For that corporate training, what are maybe the top 3 mistakes that you actually see companies making when they're planning for training for their employees?
Gosh, top 3, huh? Well, the first one is cramming too much in, right? Too much material. When we arrange for training for whoever it is, I think often we get pushback where people say, well, certainly we want to be able to train on the core concepts, but we also want warehousing and manufacturing, and can you do it in a week? The answer is no. People can't possibly absorb that much information, retain anything when they have that much thrown at them. And we've learned over time how much people can absorb in what period of time. So really listen to the advice of your training professional when they give you a suggested agenda, because that's been proven over time. And the worst thing that can happen is you can arrange for training, and in that first day, see your people come out of that classroom or away from their desks and their eyes are just glazed over and they're completely in overload and overwhelmed, because that means that all that money you spent is just going down the drain. So if you find a trainer who says no to you, hire them. That's the kind of person that you want, who's going to help you to pick the right curriculum for your people. The other mistake I would say is doing train the trainer. Train the trainer doesn't work. We all want it to, because it's less expensive. And because that person who we're designating as a trainer does have specific process knowledge for your company that an outside trainer isn't going to have for your specific processes. But if you watch the face of that person that you assign train the trainer to, you may see fear, you may see anger, you may see disappointment. Sometimes you have somebody who's enthusiastic about training, but for the most part, that person is not a trainer and they don't understand things like the adult learning techniques that we've talked about today. They don't understand how to help people to retain that information. They don't understand how to keep training on time, on a schedule, to make sure that you're actually able to include all the content and provide people with appropriate breaks. So I would say stop doing train the trainer. It's unfortunately you spend the same amount or more time with doing that and you get much less of a result. So if you're going to really invest in training, invest in trainers who can help you with that. And then last thing I would say is no follow-up or accountability. And this is kind of a weird concept. People think that when you do training, that it's an event and you're done. But when we have training, usually we're talking about change in process or new concepts that we haven't used before. And it's so easy for people to revert back to what they were doing before just because they're comfortable and familiar with it. It's harder to adopt new practices. So introducing accountability where people know that somebody's going to check in to make sure that they're doing that new process and that it's genuinely working for them, right? That sometimes we make a bad call on new processes and the person who's actually doing the work says, I just can't do it this way. Well, great. Tell me why it's not working and let's adapt it so that it does work for you. So there's a great opportunity there to make those people feel really supported in that change and to know that they can be successful with what they've learned.
Yeah. That the first one you mentioned too, I think that can be difficult for people that have been working with the software for so many years of trying to cram too much in because it's like if you know all of this information, you want to share all of this information with your trainees, but they may not need to know all of that now. And as we know with the statistic, they're probably not going to retain most of that. So I think that was a really good point. Kim and Kate, curious if either of you agree or disagree with those common mistakes or have anything else to add.
I think I think for me, the big thing I've seen is that they don't plan. So, like, oh, we don't really need to do a lot of training. This is not going to be that big of a project. It's not that big of a change. We don't have to worry about that. And then, when you take that approach, it's really not good. You're always going to end up spending more in the long run anyway. So I think we see that a lot,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Kate, how about you?
Yeah, I really, and this is, I'm just echoing other things that have already been said numerous times today. I really think that if a trainer is going into a training with one mindset, not realizing that the audience might have, 5 different learning styles, you have to kind of adapt that that content to different learning styles. I mean, I'll give a quick story. I'm helping my husband right now implement software training. They're implementing a new software and to 20 brand new employees. And there are employees at his company that want a manual. The idea of me sitting and reading a manual, like snooze fest. Like I want interaction and I want a person showing me and I want hands on. So looking at him saying, half of your people, that's not going to reach them. You've got to create different training programs to reach these people in their different learning styles. So I think that's a huge mistake, is just going into it with like so rigid in that here's a manual, see you next week. That's not going to be effective. You're not going to get the results you're wanting in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we heard a little bit of that too with even just the different generations. Erica mentioned in our intro session that different generations might have different ways of consuming information. So I know, like for me, I prefer to watch a short video rather than reading through a manual, but someone else might prefer that manual. So yeah, I think that's a very good point of making sure that you have those different options available for people who learn in different ways.
So shameless plug for Dynamics Con Live coming up. To your point, if you were at Directions, you might have seen Mary Miller, Sam Bush, and I do a session on marketing across 3 different generations at the same time and the challenges that exist within that. And they are significant.
Mhm.
We are presenting that at DynamicsCon Live as well. So if you're going to be there, please join us, because we talk a lot about that. How can you get your message to 3 different generations that not only have different learning styles, but receive messages 3 totally different ways? So shameless plug.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I will be at DynamicsCon as well, so I'll see you there.
Please come. Please come.
All right. Kim, I heard you kind of reference this a little bit in your last response, so I'd like you to expand a little bit. I've heard the phrase of pay for it now or pay for it later, especially when it might relate to training. So, how do
Mhm.
you take that to mean, and how does that play into training for companies?
Well, I think I've not only experienced it in a former life as an end user, because I was not given my budget wasn't approved for training. And I think I very loudly said, well, if we don't train the users now, we're going to pay way more for it later, because we're going to have a lot more support, right? And training is historically always the thing that gets cut out, time wise and money wise, out of an implementation project. It is what it is. But what happens then is, if you go live and your users are not trained, you have to have way more support on go live, and then after as well. You're kind of, constantly spending the next couple weeks afterwards, where you're fixing things that people just didn't get trained on how to do. So people are going to figure out a way to do it. Now, whether that's can easily be fixed is always the problem. And then whether they start kind of adopting those processes, now going back in and retraining them and also fixing it, it just kind of, the cost can go 2 3 times more than what you would have paid if you had just taken the time and spent the money to have somebody come in and train.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've heard Carrie Peters say this before, but good employees will find a way to do what they need to do. It may not be the most efficient. And sometimes, we'll get those employees in training and we show them how to do something. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could have done this all along. I was doing this workaround way. So, yeah, I think good employees will find a way to get it done. But better, as you mentioned, with the training, because it's going to be the right way and you're going to spend probably less time fixing things in the end.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Kim. So Kate, I would like to hear a little bit more from you about the attention span of students or trainees in training, because I know for myself, I have to close out of Outlook. I have to put myself on Do Not Disturb on Teams, or I will not focus on what I'm doing. So how do you in your training manage the issue of attention span just decreasing? And do you feel like that's a big problem?
Man, I am so passionate about this. Like I'm trying to not get on an absolute soapbox. Yes, it is a problem. It is a significant problem. So I'm going to throw down a number at you, and you're going to look at me like I'm bonkers, but I've seen it for myself. As an instructor, um, as a speaker, even in conversation with someone, you have 7 minutes before the person that you're talking to starts trailing off. 7 minutes. So what do you do about that? That's human. That's human nature. There are exceptions, of course, and hats off to those exceptions. But yes, it is a real problem. So you have to be aware of that in your training programs. There are things that you can do to combat that. I heard Carrie mention my favorite one: chunking information. So you break down training content into smaller, more manageable chunks, and that prevents an information overload. It helps keep the learner's attention, and most importantly, retention. Um, in presenting your information in smaller, more digestible chunks, um, a learner is less likely to feel overwhelmed. We have all been up against maybe a new job or a new software, a new implementation. It just feels like you're, standing in front of a fire hose. So putting yourself in those shoes and seeing the learner with that empathy, breaking down information into digestible chunks. Also, interactive learning activities. I've heard all of these today already. Like I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but using interactive elements like your quizzes, polls, case studies, any kind of exercise So you want to engage, and not only engage, but you want to re-engage. So every 7 minutes, what can you do as an instructor if you're in a room with people to stop and re-engage your who you're teaching to? Get them to move their body in some way, ask a question. Hey, raise your hand if you XYZ. Ask, is there, do you have any questions? Is this information, are you tracking with me here? Something to stop talking and re-engage who you're talking to. We have this much attention span, and I would argue that it's getting worse because of short form video, because of the way that we are marketed to. It is changing the way that we consume information, truly. I would say also varying your delivery methods. So slideshows and live demos, which I know in this space is huge. So varying the way that you're presenting, discussions, a group activity. If you're on a team or Zoom, can you do breakout rooms? Can you just change the flow of the conversation or facilitate a conversation, facilitate a discussion? Frequent breaks, right? Just stop, stand up. Carrie said it today. Stand up, get a drink of water, move your body around. So I think, and I'm very, very passionate about this because I see it in the sessions that I lead, whether in person, on, virtual sessions. I see that like glaze over, and I'm like, oh no, I'm losing you. Come back. So, kind of my nutshell moment is managing decreasing attention comes down to effective instructional design. So being effective in the way that you're teaching, the way that you're engaging and re-engaging. So using strategies, create a more dynamic and engaging learning experience. It's possible. It is possible.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, those are all some, I think, very good tips for keeping students engaged. So you had mentioned effective training and how we can accomplish that. What I'd like to do is just do a round robin style of having everyone give us just an example about a time when you experienced really effective training and what made that effective for you. So would anyone like to start? Volunteer.
Kim, I'm pretty sure you and I want to talk about the same one.
Oh, go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, you go
Yeah.
first. I'll think of something else because I
I
just
wonder
love the
if we're
story
all
when you
going to
tell
give
it.
the same answer. This is awesome.
Well, actually, for me, Carrie and I did take the Alt MBA class, which is like a Seth Godin class, and I want to say it was amazing. I'm pretty sad they're not doing it anymore. But it's you're in a cohort. It's very over the week. You have all these things that you have to do, but it was varied. It really got you thinking in a different way. It got you interacting with people you didn't know. You had a homework assignment. You worked as a group on it. You had a writing assignment. You had to critique other people's writing assignments in it. And then also kind of read the critiques of your assignments and then say, what did I learn? And it just really got me thinking in a different way. And really, I learned a ton just about, I don't even remember what the topics were each week, but I just learned a ton about how to structure training so it is more interactive and it is more exciting. So that was mine.
Yeah. Kim, how much lecture did we attend in those?
Like hardly any, like maybe 30 minutes, if that.
Right, over an entire month. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was all very interactive and just incredibly impactful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Carrie, do you have an example other than that then?
I know. I'll just build on that just a little bit. I think that the thing that I have found so incredible, probably in the last 5 or 10 years, just as a training trend that really gets me on fire, is peer-based training, where it's not teacher-student anymore. That if we think about the teacher as a facilitator, as somebody who's coming prepared with an exercise or just to guide the conversation and give people something to start with and keep them from going down too many rabbit trails, that teacher as facilitator is incredibly effective. And we see that a lot with our Consultants Accelerator, where we're doing a lot more peer-based training where we say, okay, for this session, we've got 8 topics and we're going to spin a wheel and you guys all get a random selection of a topic and go off and research it and teach it back to the team and then discuss it. And those kind of sessions are just fire. When we see that discussion happening between those students and the debate, and some people who know maybe a little bit and have questions, or some people who know more and want to correct the person who trained, there's no right answer. And the debate in that is incredible. And apply a bunch of functional consultants to that kind of training, and suddenly they're just really getting into it and they all get a lot of value out of that. And honestly, as an instructor, I haven't stood there and lectured all day and had them, fall asleep and really not get a whole lot out of it, but they remember that debate that they're having. So peer-based training is really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think as many of us know, in Business Central, there are many ways of getting to the same result. So it's cool to see what might this person be using and doing differently than me. So, okay. Thank you, Carrie. Kate, how about you? An effective training that you remember?
I would say, because I am very competitive, that any kind of training with a gamification spin on it. Anything, I mean, I'll use an example that of our director of events that we just had a little internal training. A lot of the rules for issuing these continuing education credits that we issue, we have a lot of hoops to jump through. It's not always easy. And we have to know all these rules, and it just, I'm a very creative person, so it can be a little bit laborious for me. So she knew that, and she knows that about half of our team. So she turned the entire training into a game. And I will tell you, never has information like that stuck in my head. Like, she did it. I was like, gold star for you. Like, I remember all these in and outs of our certs and the hoops we have to jump through because of the way that she presented the information. I think also I'm gonna help out the learners in the room. If you're a learner and you know that you have attention issues, these little guys are incredible. I think somebody asked a question about fidget spinners earlier. I sit here in a conference. I might have it under my jacket that I am constantly spinning it because I know that my limitations as a learner, and I am interested in the content. So this is what I do to stay engaged. But I would say, to answer the question, for me, anything with a game or make it a competition, or who can answer this question first, that was given as an example, or who can answer it first and correctly. And you're going to get a Starbucks. Oh, I'm there, and it's on.
Really, really up the stakes with the Starbucks.
Yeah, last thing I need in my life is more caffeine, but that's where we are.
All right, thank you so much, Kate. So Carrie, I'm going to hand it back over to you for a little closing, but I did just want to point out too, and maybe you can speak to this, Holly's comment in the chat saying, I'm blessed and privileged to know you ladies and share in the passion for people, training, learning, and the product NavVC. How do we ignite others on the partner side to have that same passion? Afternoons like today should be standing room only.
Oh, Holly, that's such a lovely comment. I don't know. I think we just got to keep the word out. And that's part of what we're trying to do with this event. We've committed to doing this with every new release. And we feel like getting information into people's hands about what they can do on a practical level with these new release features with their customers is the way to do that. So we hope that we get lots and lots of people attending in the future, and would love to continue sharing information about new releases and training and ways to make their projects more successful. So thank you so much for that comment, Holly. That's very nice. All right, so just a couple things to tell you guys. Our last survey for our last session, please just take a minute and scan this in and give us some feedback on the value that this session had for you and what you would like to see in the future that would continue to bring you value. I will point out too that all of these sessions are going to be on our YouTube channel. So we'll have the entire event recorded, and then we'll break these up into single sessions in a playlist so that you can share these with other people. And Holly, maybe that'll spread our message about training and what people can be doing with the new release features as well. And as always, I would love to talk with you. So if you guys have some needs, if you would like to talk a little bit about our training services or our other services or Consultants Accelerator, you can always use this link to set up a meeting to talk with me at any time. And thank you guys for attending, and thank you to all of our presenters. Gosh, this was a wonderful way to spend some time together. And I really appreciate having such vibrant presenters who are so passionate about training and passionate about consulting and our customers. And I know that you who are joining us here have those same passions. So thank you so much for being here. Please be in touch with us. We would love to talk with you about things in the future.